Classically Dad. Welcome to the channel. The false analogy fallacy. The false analogy fallacy is also known as the weak fallacy. This fallacy occurs when an arguer compares two things that are similar but only in irrelevant ways. There is no simple formula in recognizing whether an analogy is weak or strong, so each argument must be observed on a case-to-case basis. The false analogy fallacy is committed when a person makes a comparison using a weak analogy.
Raymond was best described as a thoughtful child, but his mind wasn't occupied by the same things as other kids his age. Raymond, you see, has waited his whole life to try ice cream. When he was young, Raymond told himself he'd try ice cream once he turned 30. Then it was after he got married, and now it's when he gets the big promotion. So Raymond has just gotten used to saying, well, maybe next year. And to many people, his decision doesn't make much sense. Clearly he wants ice cream. He knows he can afford it. It might even enrich his life, and yet he resists. Still, some nights he lies awake, wondering what ice cream tastes like.
In this commercial, Mercedes Benz tells the story of Raymond, a man who has waited his whole life to try ice cream. This commercial makes an analogy between eating ice cream and buying a new car. The argument is that both items could enrich your life and fulfill a desire. Although the commercial is effective, it violates the false analogy fallacy because ice cream and cars are only similar in trivial ways.
Very quickly, because you're also getting some heat right now, some criticism, not just from Republicans, but Democrats as well, for your criticism of the president, comparing him to Nazis and Goebbels and Hitler. You said the other day in an interview with Al Sharp that President Trump, perhaps inspired by Goebbels and the propagandists of the Third Reich, seemed to employ this tactic that the bigger the lie, the more obscene the injustice, the more dizzying the pace of this bizarre behavior, the less likely you were able to do something about it. Is that not going too far to make a comparison between the President of the United States and the Nazis?
Find me a better analogy of another leader of a Western democracy describing all people of one religion as inherently defective or disqualified or dangerous. And that's what the president has done when it comes to Muslims, seeking to ban all Muslims from this country. Repeating the lie that Mexican immigrants pose a violent risk to this country, calling them animals and predators and rapists and criminals, asking 4 women of color elected by their constituents to Congress to go back to their home country, and having an almost Nuremberg-like rally where people are chanting, "Send her back," or inviting the kind of violence based on the racism that he's inspired, where you have another crowd cheering when someone says, "Shoot them," when the president asks, "What do we do about these immigrants?"
In this clip, Beto O'Rourke compares President Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. Although O'Rourke could make a true statement that both Trump and Hitler use harsh rhetoric to communicate, the analogy is a false analogy fallacy because Adolf Hitler orchestrated the execution of more than 6 million people and is arguably the most vile dictator in history. There is no relevant comparison. Be mindful that any analogy that compares someone who is not guilty of genocide to the Nazis or Hitler is typically faulty. The false analogy fallacy is committed when a person claims a direct connection between two things that are only loosely connected. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. It's so nice when you share. Thanks for visiting Classically Dad.